All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. I guess I'll begin by saying the best for the last, right? The last speaker today. But I am very, very pleased to be representing the National Association for Bilingual Education. I serve on the board as vice president together with, we have our executive director here, Dr. Santiago Wood. And thank you very, very much for the invitation to have us here. Okay, well, I'm going to go quickly through my presentation so that we can finish on time. But before I do that, I'd like to let you know that Virginia, Bilingüe, and I are both editors on the Knowledge Journal for Research and Practice. I know we've mentioned that to several of you. We are accepting manuscripts for publication consideration. We're going to be having 4 issues per year, and we want to focus on one of them on here in Europe. So please, you'll be able to get our email through Virginia, Javier. So thank you very much. All right, so mi presentación es sobre la preparación y formación didáctica y pedagógica del profesorado bilingüe en los Estados Unidos, ¿verdad? Y yo estoy en El Paso, Texas, así es que voy a también hacer referencia al Paso. Here is the College of Education, la Facultad de Educación en la Universidad de Texas en El Paso. Tenemos como 26,000 estudiantes. Como 80% son hispanos, hablan español, como 10% cruzan la frontera diariamente a venir a la universidad. The university has let me see, what did I do here? All right. Has the architecture from Tibet, Vietnamese architecture from Tibet, the entire university. It's a beautiful campus. We have undergraduate programs in bilingual education, masters, and a doctoral program in bilingual education that I initiated when I was dean of the College of Education. With my background in bilingual education, I wanted to make sure that we had a doctorate's degree in this area, and we accomplished that feat. Well, you know, bilingual education in the United States is a little different from what it is in Spain. The way that Isabel Campoy puts it, I don't know if some of you are familiar with her. She's an author, publishes a lot of children's work, and she said, la educación bilingüe en los Estados Unidos es para sobrevivir. La educación bilingüe en España es para triunfar, ¿verdad? Because it's a very different concept. We are pretty much have been a monolingual country for the longest time, an English-only country. However, we have a very large number of people who speak languages other than English, especially our Spanish speakers. Estamos amanchados que no vamos a dejar el español, ¿verdad? Queremos seguir con nuestro español. Así es que hemos desarrollado programas por toda la nación en educación bilingüe. Tenemos, aquí están casi 5 millones de niños en las escuelas del kinder al 12º que están en programas de educación bilingüe. Y queremos no solamente que aprendan el inglés, ¿sí? Eso es muy importante, que aprendan el inglés, pero que sigan desarrollando su idioma latino, ¿verdad? Y entonces tenemos muchos programas bilingües para que los niños aprendan el inglés, pero ahora los programas no solamente son para que aprendan el inglés, pero para que sigan desarrollando, que sean bilingües, es lo que queremos, que sean bilingües. Lo más interesante es que ahora mucha gente que nomás habla en inglés en los Estados Unidos, los que les llamamos los gringuitos, ¿verdad? En los Estados Unidos, los anglosajones, también ahora están viendo los resultados que tenemos en educación bilingüe para los niños que hablan solamente español o vietnamís o chino o algo, y ahora ellos también quieren ser bilingües. Ahora entonces tenemos los programas que se llaman doble sendero, two-way dual language programs. where the English speakers are learning Spanish and the Spanish speakers are learning English in the same classroom, right? So they're learning from each other, and it's very, very exciting. And those programs are mushrooming all over the United States, and so it has given bilingual education a level of prestige. It's an enrichment program. It's no longer a compensatory remedial program for those poor little children who don't speak English, which has been the history in the United States of bilingual education, bilingual programs for those poor little kids who don't speak English, right? It's no more. It's no more because we have a lot of Anglo-Saxons, English-speaking people in the U.S. They want their children to be bilingual for lots of reasons. So it's very exciting. Here you see the top 5 home languages that are spoken in our public schools from kindergarten to the 12th grade. The other very exciting thing that we have going in bilingual education is that our programs are not transitional programs like let's quickly transition kids into English, right? Let's just use their native language for a short period of time, which was the case, and it's still the case in some districts throughout the U.S. But that's being erased. Now we have programs K through the 12th grade in bilingual education, K through 12. In El Paso, we have a good number of programs. That's where I'm at. And El Paso is right on the border of Mexico and New Mexico. And we have a number of schools that have bilingual education from pre-kinder all the way to the 12th grade. So students are learning in 2 languages, content. They may take in middle school and high school biology or history or something in Spanish, right? And then some of the other areas in English. So that's very, very exciting. And also that the kids are integrated with English speakers in the same classroom. So our bilingual teachers have to be very, very well prepared. So I'll talk a little bit about that. In Texas, of course, 96% of the children who speak a language other than English speak Spanish. 97%. Estamos invadiendo todo Texas, los hispanos, ¿verdad? En el estado de Texas, por casi todos los Estados Unidos, no nomás en Texas. Well, here's the campus of the University of Texas at El Paso. It's a beautiful campus. I'm just going to mention a little bit about being admitted to the teacher preparation program. It's not easy to be admitted to a teacher preparation program in Texas, and every single state has their own rules. They're similar, right? They're similar, but they have their own way of admitting students into the teacher preparation program. And also the degree, the courses, the state exams, we have very, very difficult exams for teachers who want to become bilingual teachers. And so I want to mention some of that, but the most important thing is that everything is kind of aligned. We have the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills in Texas, and just about every state has the same thing. And it tells us in every single course, in every single grade level, the things that children should know and be able to do. And based on that, then we have to prepare teachers to be able to teach that, and their exams to become a bilingual teacher or just a teacher, are aligned. Also aligned with all the state standards, so everything's aligned, so that the teachers are being prepared in the areas with a state curriculum for the students. And every other state, 49 other states in the country, are very similar. All right, to be admitted, just to be admitted to the teacher preparation program, they have to pass a basic test of reading, writing, and math. They complete 3 essays. They have to pass a fingerprinting criminal background check. And all educators in Texas have to have their fingerprints on record. And I'm pretty sure that's the same thing for every other state. They complete a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Learning and Development. And they select their concentration for either early childhood through the 6th grade or 4th through to the 6th grade. To the 8th grade, and so one of those concentrations. Because our bilingual teachers in the elementary school, where we have the majority of the bilingual programs in the elementary schools, these teachers have to be very well prepared to teach all subject areas using ESL methodology integrated into the content areas. but also they have to be able to provide excellent instruction in the native language, in Spanish primarily. But in other places throughout the United States, it might be Chinese, Vietnamese, but the majority of programs throughout the United States are English, Spanish. So there's all sorts of things here. Some of my students, they have to also, the university has a qualifying exam to prepare them to pass the state exam. So we're here at the bottom are the exams that our teachers have to pass. They have a content, they have to know the content they're going to be teaching in either the early childhood through the 4th grade or the upper grades 4th through 8th grade. And then they also pass them to take a pedagogy and professional responsibilities test. And then there's another test that is called the BTLPT, the Bilingual Target Language, where they have to show proficiency in both English and Spanish in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. All right, so we have to prepare our teachers in all of those areas. So we give them a qualifying exam to say, yes, you're ready to take the state exam. Because they only have 5 chances to pass the state exam. If they don't do it, you know, they can't become teachers. They have to go do something else. All right, and there's a lot of courses that the teachers have to do some field experiences out in the schools, and also their student teaching. So they have about 180 hours of experiences needed before they apply for certification. This is one of the courses that I teach is on parent community advocacy in bilingual ed. We prepare every single one of our teachers to work effectively with parents. So I take them into one of the schools to work directly with parents, doing workshops on what the parents have said they need help to work more effectively with their children at home. All right, then their degree is, well, they have 120 hours, which is 40 courses that they take, all the basics the first 2 years, and then there's 30 hours of bilingual ed, math, physical science, English, history, political science, etc. And then during their senior year, they're primarily focused on preparing to be bilingual educators. So here is one of our proud graduates, completion of the Bachelor of Arts in Applied Learning and Development. But let's look at on the pedagogical preparation, because that was part of my title, ¿verdad? Cómo preparamos a nuestros maestros para que sean efectivos en los salones de educación bilingüe. Well, one of the things that is very, very critical for us, how are we going to prepare our teachers is what are the methods, the strategies we're teaching. You know, everything that we do needs to be evidence-based. Prove it. You know, where does it say we should be doing this? Why does it say, you know, this strategy works in your classroom? Prove it. Where's the research? Right? And so, ¿qué nos dice la investigación? Hay que comprobar que las estrategias que se están utilizando son efectivas. So, you know, when we started bilingual ed, or somebody else started, I was not there 50 years ago, started bilingual education, but some people did, you know, it was all like, well, I think this is what we should be doing, right? But now we have the evidence. We have a lot of evidence because there's so much research on a lot of things. And there is a publication by the U.S. government, the Office of Education, called Teaching Academic Content and Literacy to English Learners in Elementary Middle Schools. It's what works. And only the studies that have been done with the most rigorous research, the strategies get into this book. And those are into this publication, and those are the strategies that we at the university are supposed to be using in the preparation of our teachers, right? Strategies that have been proven through research that they work. There's been a control group, there's been, you know, another group that has received all of the training, and then we do a comparison to see what works and what doesn't work. And if it works, it goes into this book, and it is something that we use for the basis of preparing our teachers. So there's 4 critical pedagogical domains that define teacher preparation: designing instruction and assessment, creating positive, productive classroom environments. When children are learning a second language, we have to have a very dynamic classroom, a very supportive with very high expectations. And so those are areas where we train our teachers to do that. And then not only designing instruction, but implementing effective, responsive instruction and assessment. And then fulfilling professional roles and responsibilities. And I wish I could go through all of this, but in the PPR that I showed you, that exam, that state exam, this is what teachers are assessed. That's what they're tested on. They have a 5-hour exam that they take. This is a state exam to see if they are able to deliver the curriculum with the standards that have been designed by the state. And like I said, every single state in the country probably has very similar process. So we also look at the research on the characteristics of effective programs for ELs. What are the effective programs? What is the research saying on that? Because we're going to use that as the basis for preparing our teachers, not on something that has not been proven. So we know that programs that are long-term, at least 6 years of bilingual education, at least 6 years, are going to be our most effective programs. Instruction to the first language. There is a very critical need to make sure that our students, because they're young, they're in kinder, they're in first, they're in second. So we're not going to be doing instruction only in English. We're doing extensive primary language instruction because it's about academic, cognitive, intellectual development through their native language. All right? And then, of course, sociocultural support, using strategies that are highly interactive, cognitively challenging, discovery learning, using all sorts of discovery learning activities in the classroom, and then the integration of our English learners with what we call the mainstream, and those are our proficient English speakers. There's a major dynamic that occurs, and teachers need to know how to constantly shelter the instruction and challenge, depending on what language you're using in the classroom. All right, there's a lot more to say about that. We look at the research on predictors of English language learners' success. What are the predictors? And we use this as the basis for teacher preparation also. This is all research-based as well. And then research on effective program characteristics. So one of the things that's very important here is for natural second language acquisition to occur, English learners need meaningful interaction with native English peers. So now with the two-way dual language programs, los programas que les llamamos de doble sendero, ¿verdad? Donde tenemos los niños que hablan puro inglés, otros que hablan puro español y los bilingües también, que están todos aprendiendo unos de otros, mucho trabajo en grupos. Los niños tienen que hablar mucho. No van a aprender inglés si no tienen la oportunidad de hablar. Tienen que interactuar. And they have to be using the content of the content of the content areas, math, science, social studies, literature, right, history, all of that. That is the basis for learning English. That's how the field has moved, because that's what the research is telling us is the most effective. Okay, here are just some of the titles of the courses that our students take to become bilingual educators. And sorry I can't go through all of them right now, but I highlighted a couple. I teach these 2 courses right now. I chose to teach undergraduate students because I think it's great. I work with a few doctoral students on their dissertation, but I want to teach undergraduate students because that's who I love, right? This is a parent and community advocacy in bilingual ed. They're learning how to work effectively with parents, and they have to advocate, for those parents who say, no, yo mando a mi hijo que aprenda inglés en la escuela, ¿para qué le están enseñando español? Well, you have to have knowledge, and you cannot acquire that knowledge in a language that you don't understand. So this is why we use the native language of children, right? Because children may learn English and they have nothing to say because they didn't learn anything, because they didn't have enough proficiency in English, right, to be able to learn what is being taught. So anyway, we have to work with parents so we have a lot. They take an entire course on working effectively with parents, and we take our students out into the field to work directly with parents. Then the Principles of Bilingual Education is another course that I teach. It's on the conceptual, legal, historical, legislative, philosophical foundations of bilingual education. It's a great course, I love that. But there's some more here. Instruction through the second language. I could go on and on about all this stuff, but I'm going to highlight just a few things right now. Here's a structure for instruction that is evidence-based and works. Here are the teacher responsibilities, what the teacher does in the classroom, and then the student responsibility, what the student's responsibilities are in the classroom, learning everything, including English. And then on the right side, we have what we call the gradual release of responsibility. The teacher is going to, over here, have focused instruction. There's going to be examples. The teacher is going to explain. The teacher is going to provide all sorts of things. But then it's going to guide the students, whether it's a lesson in vocabulary development or comprehension or in history or in social studies. The teacher first is going to do focused instruction. And then guided instruction, working with the kids, right? And then there's going to be a lot of collaborative learning on the part of the student. They're going to be working in groups, talking, figuring out something, doing projects together. And then there has to be some independent learning. Over there on the right side, so it's the gradual release of responsibility, which is also, there's evidence and research that this works. And so the I do it is the teacher up there. The teacher does it, right? The teacher is going to show the students something, a new skill, whatever it is, teaching something. And then we do it together as a class. And then you do it together. The students are going to work and apply whatever skill has been taught or information. Then you do it alone. There has to be some independent learning as well. So this is what this is all about. Here's the teacher responsibility, focused instruction. So identifying both content and language objectives. That's very important. Every teacher has to learn how to identify content and language objectives when teaching English, or even teaching Spanish, whatever it is. Then the teacher models, right? And here in teacher modeling, the teacher uses I statements, like, when I read this, I was thinking about this. I can make the following prediction because the author told me this. The children need to understand the thinking process that is taking place, right? And the teacher has to model that. And it is very, very effective. The teacher has to talk out loud how he or she is figuring out how to do something, right? And this is called metacognition. The teacher says, I predicted this in the story because the author told me this, right? So you're having a lesson in English or in Spanish. Let's see, reading comprehension. And so the teacher's going to be modeling. It goes with the guided instruction up here, focused instruction and guided instruction, right? And then here's the guided instruction. The teacher allows the students to do the cognitive work, and guided instruction can occur with a whole class, a small class, or individual students. Then here is the student's responsibility now. We start, and every single lesson should include these 4 things that I've included here. The focused instruction, the guided, the collaborative, the independent. Every single lesson, we make sure that students are integrating, that. Here's the collaborative learning. This is very important. This is a student-to-students interaction that is very, very critical. If students are going to learn to speak English, they have to talk. They have to talk a lot. We cannot have principals that are saying, I want a nice, quiet classroom, right? We want an organized classroom. We don't want a noisy classroom that's just making noise and not learning anything. It has to be structured so that the students are using the language that they have just learned through the content areas or whatever it may be. So students have to practice with academic language if they are to become proficient in that language. I cannot overemphasize that. I have my students always working in groups. They do everything in groups. They have to talk a lot because some of the students don't speak English very well, some of them don't speak Spanish very well, and they have to learn from each other. Sometimes our conversations are in English, sometimes are in Spanish. Okay, ya vamos a acabar. So here are the verbal interactions, a collaborative conversation with peers, peer interactions in two-way settings. This is when we put the proficient English speakers with the proficient Spanish speakers, and they're not all speaking in English and Spanish. They either stay in English or they stay in Spanish, right? Depending on what the lesson is about. So summary, ELs need to ELs, it means English learners. They need to talk with each other. You don't get good at things that you don't do. ELs have to produce language. If you only hear English and don't use it, students don't become proficient. Students have to produce it. If they heard English all day long, if they heard it all day long for an entire year, they're not going to learn it unless they're using it constantly. You have to provide those opportunities in the classroom to use the language every single day, multiple times during the day. All right? So no quiet classrooms, noisy but orderly classrooms. So we need to tell our principals, our class is going to be noisy, the kids are learning, they're talking to each other, right? I've got this under control, don't get nervous, right? I was in the classroom too, so I know principals can get a little nervous when that happens. So here again, you know, just this visual, I think that is very, very good. So then the independent reading, I'm just going to mention one thing here because this is so very important. You know, we teach and teach and teach in our classrooms, right? If the kids don't go do something independently on their own, nothing's going to stick, right? I don't know if you understand the word stick. No es palo, ¿verdad? It's not a stick, those that you hit somebody over the head. It's going to stick, right? And there's a lot of research in this area of how important it is for children to do independent reading. A lot of research is showing the the correlation that exists between the amount of time children are reading, and hopefully they're reading in English, but they can also be reading in Spanish. For us, that's very important. And the time and how students do well on standardized tests. There's a correlation. Kids that read very little, are going to have very low scores. And this is independent reading. So that all the vocabulary and everything that we're teaching in English, children have to be able to go home and read and read about that vocabulary in context, right, on their own. But the best thing, there's also a lot of research that says that there has to be a choice. Children have to select what they want to read. We can say, you're going to read this book this week, right? No, let them read what they want, but there has to be an extensive number of books in the classroom that kids can choose from. The other thing that the kids like a lot is to talk in class about the books they read at home. If you don't provide them with that opportunity, they're not going to be motivated to go home and read. All right? The other thing is book talks. Kids want to talk about the books they are reading at home, so they want to be able to talk in the classroom, and for them to also. There's a lot of research that says that if the teacher says, we have all these wonderful books that you can take home to read. This book is about this book is about that, and the kids are going to also be motivated to take those books home and read. Okay, so reading volume matters for vocabulary development. And we're going to wrap it up because I know we're running, but this is the gradual release of responsibility where kids are now doing work on their own. Bueno, ha sido un placer estar aquí con ustedes. Tengo mucho más que compartir, pero ya se nos acabó el tiempo. Muchas gracias y les deseo mucho éxito en sus programas.